Hi everybody, my name is Keith, and my dad has always let me do everything. That's it, I know you're jealous of me right now. Who doesn't dream of being allowed everything they want? Only, let me tell you, it's only high at some points. I want to tell you a story about how my permissiveness almost ended my life. My father raised me alone. My mother kind of left me to my father when I was only a month old. My father was young. He had no idea how to take care of a baby. At first, he asked neighbours to help him, hired nannies, but he couldn't afford them, so he stopped hiring them. That's when he came up with the idea of taking me to work for him. At the time, my father worked in a confectionery factory. It was a small position, but in principle, it paid well. Plus, as a nice bonus, they gave out sweets, pastries, candy, and even chocolate. Daddy just adored him. He brought home something sweet almost every day. Here, son, I bought you dinner. Yay, cake, cake, cake. It was like that every day. And then, since there was no one to leave me, my dad would leave me home alone. I was about 5 years old at the time. I think I was bored. I watched cartoons and different videos until lunchtime. And then I would go outside without even closing the house. I liked living with my dad. He never scolded me, not for anything. All the boys on the street envied me. Someone once asked, "Don't you mess up? Don't they scold you? Don't they punish you?" I was surprised at the time. "No," I answered. Sam, the boy from the yard, sighed sadly and then asked me, "Can I stay with you? I want to watch TV and eat candy too." "Okay." "Why don't you ask your dad's permission first?" "Why?" "I don't want him to scold me." "He won't, I told you. He lets me do everything." We arrived at my house just as my dad came home from work with cakes in his hand. "Wow, Dad, you brought dinner again." "Yeah, your favourite." "Cool. Dad, by the way, this is Sam. He is staying with us." "Okay, no problem. Hey, Sam." "Huh?" "Come on over for dinner." "But my mum won't let me have sweets before we eat." "We have different rules in our house, so relax." "Cool. Won't you tell Mum?" "No, I don't talk to her, so no problem. Go for it." We ate a whole box of cakes during the evening, but the happiness didn't last long. When Sam's mum came home from work, she was told by the neighbours that her son had gone on our place. She came in as Sam was finishing his last brownie. "What are you doing here? Who said you could have sweets?" "Hello, Miss Mel, your son came to visit us." "I can see that. Did you bring all that sweet stuff?" "Yes, help yourself." "Didn't you ask me if he could eat so much or not?" "Why not? I don't forbid my son anything." "I can see that." "What do you mean?" "Your son strolls around all day, takes what he wants, and does what he wants. Yesterday he knocked over the trash can in front of my house." "What can you do? Kids." "You're a child yourself. No wonder you're acting like this, on the level of a child." "Ma'am, don't swear at Daddy." "And you shut up, you little brat. Sam, go home now." Sam put his head down and they walked out of the house. I was so upset. I went out into the yard. Dad tried to calm me down, but the thing was, Sam was the only one I more or less communicated with. All the other guys were forbidden to talk to me. "Fuck them all, you know. I had a very strict mum when I was a kid. I wasn't allowed anything, so I decided that when I had kids, I would allow them everything." "Yes, you never scolded me, but why do other parents forbid their children to communicate with me?" "I don't know, son. I don't understand them. Let's go inside." "Yeah, I'm hungry again." And that's how I got addicted to sweets. I ate cookies, candy even, when I was full. There was hardly any regular food in our house, so tomorrow, lunch and dinner were all the same for me. By the time I was 9 years old, I had tried every kind of sweet that Daddy's factory had. Even though I went to school by then, I still didn't have any normal friends. I was nicknamed the dentist because of my black teeth. I would go into class and the girls would start laughing at me. "Oh, the dentist is here. Look at him." I would sit down silently at the table and the guys would laugh at me. My classmate Rosie came up to me and sat at my desk. "Hey, do you even brush your teeth sometimes or not?" I didn't say anything. Then she snatched a book off the table and threw it on the floor. I silently picked it up. "Determined not to open your stinking mouth? I bet you've never taken care of your teeth, have you? I know where your dad works. Is that why you're so fat?" By that time, not only did my teeth turn black, but I gained weight, and I gained a lot. And every time I got stressed, I was eating candy even more. 2 years later, I had a hard time getting out of bed and taking a shower on my own. I got so fat, I couldn't see my own wrinkles. Against this backdrop, my classmates would walk all over me, sometimes throwing things at me, checking to see if they would get stuck in my folds of fat or not. I would come home frustrated and demand cake from my father. He kept bringing it every day and I kept eating it. And then one day, a teacher came to our house. She wanted to have a serious talk with my dad. All I heard was, "You have to put him on a diet and take him to a nutritionist and a psychologist. Otherwise, the school will do it for you." With those words, she left and my dad got sad. I didn't want to go anywhere because it pissed me off. Not only that no one communicates with me, but I also became ugly. To please me somehow, Dad brought me a video console. And that's it, my loneliness is over. I plunged into the virtual world. I did not care about anything. I stopped going to school where I was bullied, began to eat and lie down all day. That's how my obesity kicked in even more. 6 months later, the inevitable happened. I remember waking up and my dad wasn't home. I didn't feel well. My heart was pounding and my mouth was dry. I thought I just wanted to eat and drink, so I took the ice cream out of the fridge and ate a bucket. But I felt even worse. After a while, I went outside to get some air and lost all consciousness. I woke up on the ground. My neighbours had gathered around me, some calling my father and some calling an ambulance. I asked for water and passed out again. And then I don't really remember what happened next. I woke up at the hospital room. My father was sitting next to me crying, saying that it was all his fault. "What happened?" "My son, you're awake. Doctor, he's awake." The doctors came running to me, started examining me, feeling me up. It wasn't until sometime later when I came to that they told me I had some kind of food coma. Plus, I'd given myself diabetes. It's a horrible and scary disease, but it was a consequence of me eating too many sweets. Dad got really upset. He cried and cried. I was unconscious for 6 days. That's a lot for a kid, but I made it. When I was discharged from the hospital, of course they put me on a proper diet and told me to exercise. To somehow support me, my father started walking with me in the mornings before school. And yes, the school brought me back. After my story, the guys didn't make fun of me anymore. They treated me with sympathy. I don't even know what was worse. I resisted changing. I didn't want to wake up in the morning and drink vegetable smoothies, but my dad made me. We fought a lot because of this, but my father said that he had almost threatened me with a lack of inhibitions, and I didn't want to understand or accept that. I wanted it the way it used to be.
Hi, my name's Adrian, and I'm going to tell you a crazy story about how I lived in poverty, suffered from hunger, and then suddenly, everything changed. Once again, I'm convinced that everything in life happens for a reason, and sooner or later, justice takes over. In the meantime, listen, watch, like, subscribe to the channel, and also write your opinion in the comments below the video. I'll definitely read everything. For as long as I can remember, I grew up in a small house surrounded by a bunch of kids. We lived far away in the village. I had foster parents, as well as 3 sisters and 2 brothers. We were also called the foster family. The fact is that all of us were not siblings. Our parents could not have children, and therefore they adopted us all. Yes, they did not live richly, but they wanted and loved children. I can't say that was so bad for me, because we had a great relationship with each of the family members. I, like everyone else, wondered where I came from, who my parents were, and the only thing I had was a photo of my dad and my mom. I also kept it in my shirt pocket. When I felt really bad, I would look at him. The photo was old, of poor quality, or my father and mother were very young, probably just married. I knew nothing more about them. My foster parents said that I, like everyone else, was taken from the orphanage when I was very young. My mother fell in love with me at first sight, and it was a motherly, pure love. I was brought up, and that's how I grew up. My parents did the housework, we saved on everything, and I often wore my brother's old clothes because I was the youngest of them. We had our own daily routine. We woke up, washed up, had breakfast, and got to work. As you know, there's always a lot to do in the house. In the spring, we planted a field in summer, removed the weeds, watered autumn harvest, and winter clearing the snow, and I went with my father to town to sell the crops. We received few gifts. Sweets in the house were a luxury. We even sometimes had the water turned off due to non payment. Everyone in the village treated our family with condemnation. They didn't understand why parents should have so many children if they weren't able to feed them properly. But my brothers and I usually stood up for our family. Who cares? We didn't complain to anyone. My parents were working, and come on. But then something happened. Our dad got sick. Even that year, the harvest was very bad, and we had to get into big debts, and so my brothers and I decided to drop out of school and go earn money. It was hard, because there was almost no work in our district. So we talked to my mother and went to the city. At first, she was against it, but my father was very bad. We needed money to cure him, and Mom let us go. Each of us on arrival in the city immediately rushed to look for work. We were separated by long distances. Working in the same area as we planned did not work out. So we separated. We didn't have any phones to call, so we just agreed to come to the village for the weekend. I managed to get a job as a sales assistant in a tool shop. I knew quite well what they were and what they were for, because my father had taught me. I was quickly accepted and promised a good salary, and I was also allowed to spend the night in a special room with a bed, a sink, and a toilet. That's all I need. In this way, I was able to save on rental housing. I could come home and bring money, and my mother would buy medicine and food, and pay the bills. She was grateful to my brothers and me for trying so hard. I was pleased with myself too. It seemed the worst was over, but I was wrong. Two of my brothers went on an adventure. They messed with the wrong people, and now they're facing the law. I still don't know exactly what happened. In general, this meant that I was now the only breadwinner. So I started austerity, working late and running around at night to sweep the yards for money. I hardly ate, even saved soap, wore the same clothes, and sent all the money to my mother. So 3 months passed, and then winter began. I still wore a t shirt, a shirt, and sneakers that had been torn a long time ago, but I didn't buy anything for myself. My body had lost weight, I was overgrown, and I was running out of strength. The owner felt sorry for me, sometimes brought me food and water, and then gave me an old jacket and boots, for which I was grateful. I worked for him for 3 years and 5 months, during which time I never went home, only sent money. My father had recovered a little from the stroke, but he still couldn't move properly. The brothers were in prison, and I couldn't even visit them. I did my job well. Clients came to us. I advised them, helped them, told them, explained, and one mister, with whom I started a conversation, asked where I was from. So I told him about the family briefly, and then he'd asked me to work for him. He said that I could come to his house on weekends and help fix cars in his auto repair shop. He promised to pay double, so I immediately agreed. I worked for him for about 2 months, during which time I managed to meet his wife, Ms. O'Neill. She was kind to me, always feeding me, wrapping my food, and leaving tips. I found out they had no children. More precisely, there was a child, but they lost it. We've always lived comfortably and had many enemies. And once, when a son was born in the family, we were so happy that we decided to hold a reception in honor of it. My wife and I took a photo, and then she put him in the cradle with the baby. She rocked him and put him to sleep and went to the guests. When we returned 10 minutes later, the baby was gone, Mr. O'Neill had said. The missus said they were still looking for him, but it had been so many years. I listened to their stories for a long time at dinner. I felt sorry for them, but when they mentioned the cradle in the photo, I suddenly remembered my mother's words. I just called her recently, and she said that God Himself sent me to them because she lied. I was not taken from an orphanage. I was thrown to them in a cradle. All I had with me was this photo and nothing else. Miss O'Neill talked on, and with trembling hands I reached into my pocket and pulled out the photo. I don't know why I wanted to do this, but somewhere, a drop of hope flashed. What is it? Where did you get it from? She asked, and tears came to her eyes. I could see that she was feeling sick, as if she was suffocating. Mr. O'Neill took the photo and fainted. When we brought him to his senses, he began to cry. I could believe, as they did, that we had found each other after all this time. My real parents were rich people. They immediately took me out of my job, transferred me to another school, but I didn't want to give up my earnings because I'd remembered another family. My father was sympathetic to this and said that I had grown up a wonderful person with a sense of duty and responsibilities, like a real man. We came home to the village. My father gave me money for my father's rehabilitation and also made repairs in the house. I promised to help the family in the same spirit, and so I worked on weekends, not sitting at home. Even though I was rich now, I still didn't want to burden my parents. As for the people who stole me out of the house and took me to the village, throwing me to the first house they came across, they were punished long ago. They're now serving time in prison. The most interesting thing is that they were our neighbors, farmers from the next street. They wanted to sell me first, but they were afraid of my father's influence, and there was no turning back. Mom almost killed them, but I talked them out of it. After all, despite everything, justice has prevailed. A few years later, I was already finishing school, and with good grades, we met my sisters. I visited my brothers and my parents. We went to visit them, and they also came with us. Dad always said they owed them a huge debt for raising me. This, it turns out, happens in life. It's amazing, isn't it? What do you think about it?